Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second edition of Split Time. I'm your host, Garrett McCaffrey, and for those of you seeing Split Time for the first time, just kind of want to explain the concept. We're taking the typical everyday news stuff that we discuss on the morning swim show, and we're putting a little bit of opinion to it. We're putting some discussion to the same type of topics that you're going to hear on a daily basis on the morning swim show, except for we're going to put a little opinion to it. We're going to bring in guests, and we're going to talk about these topics with a little opinion. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest for today. His name is Chris DeSantis, possibly familiar to those out in the blogosphere, and he joins us from Atlanta, Georgia via Skype. Chris, how goes it, my friend?
It's going great, Garrett. It's good to be doing a show with you again. I know it's called Split Time, so I was worried that I would be a little bit slow, but I'd be happy to do a two-man relay with you.
So today's topic is suits. And the initial reaction has to be, not suits anymore, Chris. I know that we've had this discussion in the past, but there's some new upcoming angles to the suit discussion. Last week, we had the sports superstar address the suits within an article and pretty much call out the rest of the sport who continued to wear the suits leading up to this January 1 ban of them. But what Michael said in an article last week was that he was going to be wearing jammers at the upcoming World Cup, and he challenged anyone else to race him in those jammers as well. Chris, what was your initial reaction to that article?
I thought it was awesome. I mean, I think we're seeing a whole new Michael Phelps, and that's what's really exciting to me. He's coming into his own a little bit. I don't want to. I don't think you can actually overstate the influence of Shaq verse. You might laugh, but really, I think Shaq showed him a little bit of how to be media savvy in a different way, a little bit more interesting way. It's okay to make provocative statements. He's not calling anyone out specifically here. He's just saying, this is what the new rule is going to be. I'm on board. Who wants to come with me?
I couldn't agree more. I love hearing a little personality out of Michael. A lot of times he's very PC and very practiced with his interviews and his reactions. So to see him have a little bit of almost a little bit of cockiness, a little bit of I like to see the back and forth. I like to see a little bit of personality. And you know he's a competitive guy. He couldn't do what he does unless he was a competitive guy. So it's kind of nice to hear him vocalize that. If I'm a swimmer, though, and I'm in this World Cup event, I'm going to win some money. I'm trying to support my ability to, to pay for my bills and eat. And as a swimmer, it's hard enough as it is. So if I'm going to this World Cup, I'm probably paying for an international flight, hotel, all of that other stuff. Then I'm gonna be in the best suit that I possibly can to win some money, and I don't know that I would care whether Michael Phelps liked it or not. I think that my opinion would be I would be in the best suit possible. Chris, do you agree with that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't understate that either. And we saw in the first World Cup in Durban, people didn't put their full body suits away. They're racing in them. They're racing for cash, and they're going for it. I think that it's great from both perspectives. Those people have a right to do that. They're well within the rules of FINA, and they can go for it. And Phelps, he sort of gets to win a moral victory in moving on to the rule, because I feel like a lot of people in the swimming community that are fans of the sport, whether they like the ruling or not, are just sort of ready to move on. I know I was a suit fan, you could say, and I'm sort of ready to move on to the future. Once they change the rules, I'm ready to move on positively, and so I can see it from both perspectives.
So I guess the last question is, before we move on to a different angle on this topic, will he win? I mean, in a jammer, does he stand a chance against a guy like Paul Biederman in a 200 freestyle who will, we can only assume, be wearing one of the shiny suits?
Does he stand a chance? Yes. Will he win? I'm not so sure. And the other thing that comes into play here is that short course meters traditionally has not been the best format for Michael. He's a really good long course swimmer, and he's good underwater, but he's not good underwater in the same way like a guy, Peter Marshall, who does so much better short course meters than long course meters is.
So as we kind of transition into the next question, I guess there's a couple different angles I want to take with this next question, and it's something that everybody talks about. I was up in the press zone in Rome, and it was a conversation that you heard constantly circulating. How long until we see another world record?
Well, it could be next year, and what the event that I'm really targeting is that men's mile. It's hard to believe it, but that record survived the onslaught, even though Zhang Li from China ended up beating the 800 free by 6 seconds. The 1500 went untouched. I think if there's a meet this summer and the best distance swimmers are focused just in on the mile, there's a good chance that record could go down. But otherwise, yeah, you're right. There isn't a great chance of a world record being broken this year.
I think it's interesting that you bring up the Chinese, because this past weekend we saw a couple Asian records go down, and based on some of their performances both in Beijing and in Rome this past summer, there's been some whispers around the pool deck, and Craig Lord put some of those whispers into writing this past week in an article that talks about the suits as a cover-up for possibly some other form of cheating taking place. Chris, did you have a chance to read that article?
I did, but with Craig, you almost didn't have to read it. He's written this article before. It isn't the first time he's brought up the fact that the suits, in his opinion, could have possibly been masking doping. Now, you have to give Craig credit because he's been out front on a number of doping scandals. He was out front on the Chinese, who were famously exposed in the mid-'90s. He was out front on the East Germans, and so he has some legitimacy. I think the problem with this is that the characterization he's making is China, good performance, drugs. There's not a whole lot of evidence besides that. Everything that he's looking at is circumstantial. And so from another perspective, it's really tough to pass judgment on swimmers just based on performance.
How about a 25-second final 50 in an 800 freestyle? Is that something that you just normally happens? I mean, can you look past something like that?
Again, I mean, it's easy to look at results and say that's unbelievable, but I think from a fan's perspective, that almost ruins the sport for you if you can't value any sort of extraordinary performances when you immediately jump to the drug conclusion. We have testing procedures in place. They're not perfect, but they do catch some people, and we really can't do that much better than that. If we play the guessing game with everybody, what point is there in following the sport? I mean, I think when Dara Torres made her comeback for the 2008 Olympics, a lot of people were playing this game. There were some people that were holding back, I think, in terms of getting into it, saying, well, I don't know. I mean, if she's doing this well at 42, that's kind of unbelievable. But I just don't think you can play it that way.
And I couldn't agree more with the fact that a lot of these scandals really take away from fans' abilities to be just that, a fan. And it was something that really frustrated me this past summer in Rome, because the entire talk was just, instead of celebrating any of these swims, was belittling them. And it was very frustrating to see, because I am openly a fan of the sport. I know from a journalist perspective that might not be the best thing, but I can't help myself in the fact that I am a fan of the sport, and I want to be able to celebrate and enjoy some of these records. And that's one of the reasons that I look forward to getting back to the older suits, so that we can become fans again, so that everybody can celebrate as opposed to speculate. But I think that there is some truth and there's some reason to be suspicious in those situations, as there are in every single sport in the world nowadays. So as we kind of transition in, I have a question for you as a college coach. You have come off of a season where and you're probably in the midst of recruiting right now too, and with no specifics, of course, but one of the questions I have for you is, how much do you factor in these suit times in the kids that you're looking at right now?
Well, I mean, that's the game I think every college coach is playing, and it's a really tough one because there was some science suggesting different directions that certain people were helped, but there wasn't a lot of conclusive stuff out there. So we're all just sort of making very subjective evaluations of people. We're recruiting based off of swims that were done in bodysuits, but were concerned with your ability to not swim in a bodysuit and in a textile suit. So things have really changed. And, to be honest, I think anyone would be lying to you if they said they weren't playing a little bit of a guessing game.
Absolutely. I think there's no argument about that. So hopefully you guys got a little bit out of this conversation. Again, we're developing this segment here on swimmingworld.tv. We're hoping to eventually bring you, the viewer, into this conversation via telephone calls, via GChat, via any kind of instant messenger that we can find. We're trying to figure out the best way to get you involved. It's a developing thing, and hopefully you enjoy it. Chris, always enjoy talking with you about the sport that we both love so much, so thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Garrett McCaffrey, and for this week, that's Split Time.